You think about the news from the coast. You think about the ship drifting in the Atlantic with its cabins full of fever and its holds full of ghosts. The Dutchman on that ship felt fine for weeks. He walked the deck and watched the waves while a microscopic protein was already unzipping his lungs. That is the trap. You could have inhaled the ghost of a dead rat 3 weeks ago while moving boxes in the garage. You could be halfway through your own countdown right now. Your heart beats a little faster, and you feel the phantom weight of fluid in your chest. Shivering takes energy you do not have to waste. You need to focus on the 10 feet of space around you. The world outside is obsessed with ports and borders, but the real front line is the dust on your floor. Survival is not a grand gesture. It is a series of small clinical movements. If you find value in these silent protocols, you should mark your presence in the logs below. Sharing the signal ensures the frequency stays clear for those still breathing. It is the only way the network survives the silence. You wipe the sweat from your eyes with a clean sleeve. The clock is ticking, but you are still moving. The smell is faint but unmistakable. It is the sharp metallic scent of old urine and stagnant air. You stand in the center of your storage room and look at the shelves. The light from your small flashlight cuts through the gloom and reveals a thin layer of gray powder on the plastic bins. You want to reach out and wipe it away with your hand. You want to grab a broom and sweep the floor until it shines. That impulse is a death sentence. To sweep is to kill yourself. When you move a broom across a dry floor, you are not cleaning. You are launching a biological weapon into the air. The virus lives in the waste of the deer mouse. When the waste dries, it becomes brittle. It turns into a fine silt that weighs almost nothing. One flick of a bristle sends 10,000 viral loads into the air you breathe. You cannot see the mist, but you can feel the grit in your throat. Your lungs are moist and warm. They are the perfect landing strip for a hitchhiker that wants to turn your blood into a leak. The biology of the threat is simple and cold. The virus does not hunt you. It waits for you to be careless. Once inside, it targets the endothelium. These are the thin linings of your blood vessels. Usually they are tight, like a pressurized hose. The virus makes them porous. It turns them into a sieve. Your plasma begins to seep out of the pipes and into the open spaces of your lungs. You are not coughing because of a cold. You are drowning from the inside using your own body's water. Every breath becomes a heavy labor that costs more calories than you can find in a tin of rations. You look at the Walmart bag sitting on the floor. It contains a simple spray bottle and a gallon of generic bleach. This is not a weapon for a war, but it is the only tool that matters now. The chemistry of the solution is what keeps you on this side of the dirt. Sodium hypochlorite is a basic salt, but it is a violent oxidizer. It tears the protein coat off the virus like skin from a bone. You do not sweep. You saturate. You soak the dust until it is a heavy mud that cannot fly. You watch the liquid pool around the gray droppings on the floor. The amateurs outside are screaming about vaccines and doctors while they sweep their porches and inhale their own ends. You stay quiet and keep the spray bottle steady. The floor is wet and the air is sharp with the smell of chlorine. It is the smell of safety. You move slowly to save your breath. The world is small and the floor is dangerous, but you are still in control of the mist. The air in the room feels heavy as you press your thumb against your pulse. You count the beats. Your heart is a drum in a hollow chest. You think about the Dutch couple and the way they walked through the tall grass in Argentina. They felt the sun on their faces and thought they were safe. They had no idea that a single breath of dry air near a landfill had already sealed their fate. This is the cruelty of the 8-week lie. Most viruses give you a sign. They give you a cough or a rash within days. They warn you to fight. This one stays silent. It sits in your system like a dormant seed waiting for the right moment to bloom. You could be infected in March and not feel the first ache until May. It is a long game played with your life as the stake. The biological math is unforgiving. During those weeks of silence, the virus is not idle. It is slowly mapping your defenses. By the time you feel the fever, the battle is often already over. You imagine the passengers on the ship. They are eating dinner and laughing in the lounge while the clock is at 1 minute to midnight. They think they are healthy because they do not feel the fluid yet. You cannot trust your own feelings. You can only trust your protocols. You look at the calendar on the wall and realize that any mistake you made 2 months ago is a ghost that could visit you tonight. This uncertainty drains your mental energy. Worry is a metabolic tax. It burns through your glucose and leaves you weak. You must treat every day as day one of a new countdown. You look at the comments and the logs below. Each person marking their survival is a data point against the silence. Engaging with the others who follow the code is the only way to verify you are not alone in the dark. It is a vital link in a world that is losing its connection. You pick up a pencil and mark the date. You are still here. Your lungs are still clear. But the lie is always there in the back of your mind. You smell the old wood of the house and the faint scent of rain. The texture of the paper under your hand is rough and real. You focus on the immediate. You focus on the next hour. The future is a luxury you cannot afford to buy with your remaining strength. Your hands are tucked into blue nitrile gloves. The plastic is thin and smells like a doctor's office. You found these in the pharmacy aisle at Walmart for less than $10. They are your first line of defense against the microscopic world. You look at the heavy-duty yellow bucket you bought for $5. It is sitting on the cracked linoleum of the kitchen floor. Inside the bucket is a roll of paper towels and a thick bottle of off-brand peroxide. These are the items that vanish first because the amateurs do not understand their value. They are looking for ammunition while you are looking for surfactants. You understand the physics of a clean surface. The virus is protected by an envelope of lipids. These are fats. They are the same kind of grease that sticks to a frying pan. Plain water will not touch them. It will only move the danger from one spot to another. You need a chemical that can break that bond. When you apply the soap or the peroxide, it acts like a pair of microscopic scissors. It tears the fat apart and exposes the fragile core of the virus to the air. Once the shell is gone, the threat dies within minutes. You take a piece of duct tape and seal the gap under the door. The tape is gray and sticky. It leaves a residue on your skin that smells of rubber and glue. This is the shield. It is not made of steel or concrete. It is made of chemistry and common sense. You watch the amateurs outside through the window. They are wearing expensive camouflage and carrying heavy bags, but they are touching their faces with bare hands. They are leaning against dusty walls and sitting on contaminated ground. They are inviting the enemy into their homes because they cannot see it. You know better. You know that survival costs less than $30 if you know what aisle to walk down. You feel the sweat itch under your gloves, but you do not move to scratch it. Discipline is a tool. It is a habit that keeps you alive when the grid fails. You hear the hum of a fly against the glass. You see the grime in the corners of the room. Every inch of this space is a battlefield. You pick up the spray bottle and begin the work. You are the invisible observer of your own survival. One surface at a time, one room at a time. You are building a fortress out of plastic and bleach. The smell of chlorine is sharp enough to make your eyes water. It is a clean burn that cuts through the musty scent of the crawl space. You hold the plastic spray bottle firmly in your gloved hand. This bottle cost 97 cents at Walmart. The liquid inside is a mixture of 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. You do not guess the measurements. Survival is a game of ratios. You understand the cold chemistry at work here. Sodium hypochlorite is a restless molecule. It is looking for something to oxidize. When it touches the organic matter of a rodent dropping, it begins a violent molecular dance. It attacks the proteins. It shreds the viral RNA. It turns a deadly biological agent into a heap of inert salt and water. You spray the area until the wood is dark and dripping. You do not wipe it yet. The contact time is a rule you do not break. The virus needs 10 minutes of total immersion to die. You sit back on your heels and wait. The floor is cold beneath you. Every minute you spend in this crouch costs you calories, but rushing costs you your life. You look at the heavy-duty trash bags sitting in your kit. They are the thick, black contractor bags found in the hardware aisle. They are 3 mils thick. This is the barrier. You will double bag every piece of soaked waste. You will seal it with a gooseneck fold and duct tape. The amateurs outside are throwing waste into open bins, letting the wind catch the dried particles. They are feeding the air with the very thing that will kill them. You watch the clock on your wrist. The seconds tick by in the silence. If you are learning the science of the shield, make sure to leave a mark in the comments below. It helps the others find the right path through the dust. Your contribution keeps the signal alive when the world goes quiet. The 10 minutes are up. You begin to scoop the wet sludge into the first bag. The texture is heavy and limp. It no longer floats. It can no longer enter your lungs. You are using basic physics to win a war that most people don't even know they are fighting. The back of your neck feels a sudden draft. You freeze and look toward the window. In a world of invisible threats, the wind is either your best friend or your most patient executioner. You understand the logistics of airflow. You never work in a room that is sealed tight without a plan. You open the window on the leeward side of the house. You want the air to pull away from you, not push the dust into your face. You look at the box fan you bought for $20. It is a simple plastic square with 3 blades. You have taped a high-efficiency furnace filter to the back of it. This is a poor man's HEPA system. You positioned it to blow outward. The physics are simple. You are creating negative pressure in the room. Any microscopic particles that your spray mist will be sucked toward the filter and trapped in the fiberglass mesh. You can hear the low hum of the motor. It is a steady, reassuring vibration in the quiet house. You feel the air moving across your skin, pulling the scent of bleach and damp earth toward the outside. This is how you stay clean in a dirty world. You look at the door to the hallway. You have sealed it with a plastic drop cloth and more tape. You are isolating the zone. The amateurs are running through their houses with open windows, letting the cross breeze stir up every dormant virus in the carpets. They think fresh air is always healthy. They are wrong. Air is just a transport mechanism for whatever is small enough to ride it. You check the seal on your mask. The bridge of your nose is sore from the pressure. Pain is a reminder that the seal is tight. You move to the corner of the room where the shadows are deepest. You see the nest. It is a tangle of shredded insulation and dried grass. It is the heart of the infection. You do not touch it yet. You check the fan. You check the pressure. You ensure the wind is working for you. Every breath you take is a filtered gift. You do not waste it on fear. You waste it on the work. The logistics of survival are boring and repetitive. That is why they work. You are the master of your 10 feet of space. The air is moving exactly where you told it to go. The crunch of glass under your boot sounds like a gunshot in the quiet house. You look out the window at the neighbor's garage. The door is hanging off its hinges. Inside, you see the silhouette of a man moving quickly through the shadows. He is throwing old blankets and cardboard boxes into a pile. He is not wearing a mask. He is not using a spray bottle. He is an amateur, and he is digging his own grave with every movement. You watch as he kicks a pile of old newspapers. A small cloud of gray dust rises into the air and swirls around his head. He breathes it in without a second thought. To him, it is just dirt. To you, it is a biological payload of viral proteins looking for a host. The cold math of his survival is already trending toward 0. In 3 weeks, he will feel the first tickle in his throat. In 4 weeks, he will be gasping for air while his lungs fill with the water of his own blood. He thinks he is winning because he found a few cans of food and some dry wood. He does not realize that the cost of those supplies was his life. The contrast is sharp and painful. You sit in your clean zone and maintain your silence. You do not shout a warning. The wind would only carry his exhaled breath toward you. Survival is a private endeavor. If you understand why the silence is necessary, leave a sign in the logs below. It tells the others that the message is being received by those who actually listen. You turn away from the window. The man outside is a ghost who hasn't realized he is dead yet. You focus on the texture of the plastic gloves on your hands. You focus on the steady rhythm of your own heart. You have chosen the path of the veteran. It is a lonely path, but it is the only one that leads to the next sunrise. You pick up your bucket and move back into the shadows. The amateur will be gone soon, and the house he is cleaning will belong to the mice again. You will still be here because you respected the invisible. The weight of the black bag in your hand is surprising. It is full of soaked insulation and the wet, heavy remnants of the nest you destroyed. This is the waste protocol. You do not simply throw this in the trash. You treat it like spent nuclear fuel. You place the first bag inside a second bag. This is the double barrier method. You squeeze the air out slowly, making sure the exhaust goes through your filtered fan. You twist the top of the inner bag into a tight coil. You fold it over itself to create a gooseneck. Then, you wrap the duct tape around the neck until it is a solid, gray trunk of adhesive. This seal is the only thing standing between the virus and the world outside. The chemistry of the bleach is still working inside the bag, but the physical barrier is your final insurance. You feel the strain in your lower back. Bending over for an hour has cost you precious energy. You calculate the metabolic debt. You will need an extra 300 calories tonight just to offset the work of this cleanup. You look at the floor where the nest once sat. It is now a dark, damp patch of clean wood. The smell of ammonia has been replaced by the sterile scent of the peroxide. You take off your gloves by peeling them inside out, ensuring your bare skin never touches the exterior surface. You drop them into the final waste bag and seal that too. The logistics are tedious. The amateurs would have finished this job in 10 minutes with a broom and a smile. They would be eating dinner right now with contaminated fingers. You are still working, still sweating, and still alive. The physics of the waste protocol are absolute. If the virus is trapped in the plastic, it cannot be trapped in your lungs. You carry the sealed bags to the designated disposal area. You move with a slow, deliberate gait to keep your heart rate low. Every movement is a calculated risk. Every breath is a victory. The room is finally empty. The threat is contained. You are the master of the waste, and the waste is no longer a threat. The skin on your hands is wrinkled and white from the sweat inside the gloves. You peel the last layer of plastic away and feel the cool air hit your damp palms. It is a relief that brings a sharp realization. Survival has a price that is not measured in dollars or silver. It is measured in the cold math of your own biology. You have spent 4 hours in a high-stress environment. Your body has been running on a cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones are expensive. They suppress your immune system while they keep you alert. Now that the task is finished, the crash is coming. You feel the tremor in your fingers as you reach for a bottle of clean water. You must replenish the fluids you lost to the heat of the mask and the effort of the work. If you do not eat and hydrate now, your body will not have the resources to fight off the incidental exposure that every survivor faces. You calculate the energy spent against the rations remaining. It is a balancing act on a razor's edge. The Dutchman on the ship lost this battle because he did not know he was in a war. He used his energy for sightseeing while the virus was using his energy to replicate. You will not make that mistake. You sit on your clean chair and feel the hard texture of the wood against your spine. The silence of the house is your reward. You listen to the sound of your own lungs. They are clear. There is no rattle, no weight, no fluid. To keep them this way, you must respect the recovery phase as much as the cleaning phase. Many veterans survive the initial crisis only to fall to a simple infection because they pushed their bodies too far. If you are standing with the others who have completed the protocol, mark your status in the logs below. Your presence is the only proof that the system works. You take a slow, deep breath and let it out. The air is empty of dust. The room is a sanctuary. You have paid the biological cost, and for today, your account is settled. The sun is beginning to set, casting long, orange shadows across the floor you just sanitized. You stand by the window and look out at the quiet street. The world feels different now. It is no longer a collection of houses and roads. It is a map of hidden reservoirs and invisible currents. You see a pile of leaves in the gutter, and you no longer see nature. You see a potential breeding ground for the carriers of the silt. Your perspective has shifted from the host to the observer. You have moved beyond the panic of the crowds and the ignorance of the amateurs. You have embraced the gritty reality of the second person. The Dutch couple, the ship in the Atlantic, and the scramble of the 12 countries are all part of a story that is happening to someone else. Your story is written in the 10 feet around you. It is written in the seal of your tape and the strength of your bleach. But survival is a restless master. As the air cools, you feel a new sensation. A slight chill is creeping through the floorboards. It is a reminder that one problem solved only reveals the next one waiting in the dark. The heat is leaving your house, and the cost of shivering is a tax you cannot afford to pay tomorrow. You look at the dark corner of the hallway and think about the insulation in the attic. You think about the fuel in the tank. The cycle of realism never ends. It only changes shape. You pick up your flashlight and feel the cold plastic in your grip. The grit of the day is gone, but the weight of the night is coming. You turn the light on and point it toward the ceiling. The next sensation is waiting for you.